Hey guys, welcome back. A few announcements before we get started. So I know a few episodes ago we informed you guys that we were going to be speaking at the ECETI conference this year. Unfortunately, due to personal reasons, we had to back out, and so we will not be there this year. But it'll still be a great event. So if you want to go out there, go enjoy the ranch and do your thing. But we will not be there, unfortunately. Don't forget, we have a new promo code for the Hopewell Farm CBD. That code is Ultra JTT 15. That gets you 15% off all of their 1,000 milligram and 2,000 milligram CBD. And that does not stack with the normal promo code we have, which is Journey to Truth 10, which gets you 10% off all of their merchandise. Teespring merchandise, we do have a new t-shirt up, the Activate DNA t-shirt. You can get 20% off that and all of our Teespring merchandise with promo code 20 and back. And I think that's all I'll go through today. We are joined today. Well, welcome back for the second time, Ed Spina. He was on episode 21, I think it was. I looked the other day.
That sounds right.
Right. That was, we were barely even knew what we were doing back then.
Pretty early on. Yeah.
Right. So we've come a long way. I'm sure things have changed a lot for you, Ed. For those who don't know, Ed is a transformational energy healer. He's an author, a mystic, which I want to get into what a mystic actually is. But yeah, welcome back, Ed. We're looking forward to this. We've been trying to get you back for a little bit now.
Hi, guys. It's great to be back. It's amazing that it's been 3 years since we last spoke. Well, at least formally.
It really has been. It is amazing. I think you were wearing the same shirt too. No,
my standard tennis shirt. Right.
Yeah.
I took off my t-shirt and upgraded to my tennis shirt. I'm ready for action.
Yes.
Nice. Yeah.
Great to have you back, man. Definitely.
Right. So I guess, guys, if you don't know who Ed is, I mean, he's been on episode 21, like I said, and you can go back and watch that. And it was a fantastic episode. And just a few months ago, Aaron made a highlight reel of that episode. So if you don't want to go all the way back, you can find that highlight reel. It's some really great information that was shared. And I'm actually very curious to see what has happened and what your journey has looked like since then. But for the people who don't know who you are, can you please just give a brief overview of what you do?
Right. Well, I'm an energy healer. And basically, I spend most of my time on the higher planes healing people. I take away emotional problems, mental problems, spiritual problems. I'm best known for removing curses and non-physical entities, which are the hardest things for people to get rid of. So I get rid of all these things and I do it very quickly. I have 25-minute sessions. Almost always that's enough, even for the toughest people with ritual abuse, things like that. I can even get rid of those, any entities on them and I help put their personalities together. So I do a lot of this stuff and I've been doing it. That's what I've been known for the last, since we spoke 3 years ago. This year, there's a little new wrinkle. It's an interesting story. On January 2nd, I was rereading one of my favorite books. It's called Mystic Christianity. I was rereading it for the third time. And it tells the story of Jesus from a mystic perspective. And I just finished reading the chapter where he heals Lazarus, raises him from the dead. And I put the book down and I'm in a meditative state. And then he shows up. And from time to time, he would show up. And he asked, what's up? And I said, I want to dedicate my life to raising people from the dead instead of just killing demons. So he's laughing and he says, well, what do you want? And I said, well, what I want is I want people to wake up. I want people to understand that the pharmaceutical companies, the politicians, the celebrities, the big tech companies, that all these different institutions are lying to you. And if you voluntarily want to put your health at risk or do anything, that's up to you. That's your free will. But I want all these people to know, to be doing it with informed consent. And he was just sort of thinking and nodding. And all of a sudden I had all these beings surrounding me, these higher beings. And they were just kind of assessing what to do, this and that. And then they sort of faded away. And then I got the idea, which apparently they planted in me, is to call in these ascended masters to help, to wake people up. So this season, starting in April, I began bringing in these different ascended masters from both the East and West, and I can name them all, but they're pretty much the most common and most popular ascended masters around. And I bring them in, and depending on a person's what they need, I can do whatever I can do to get them to the highest level possible. And then I can bring in one of the masters, like Jesus, Saint Germain, Mary Magdalene, Kuan Yin, Lakshmi, Lao Tzu, Buddha, Archangel Michael. I think I got everyone. There's 8 of them in total. And then people can notice the boost in energy that they get from these different masters. So they are on board for my desire to help get people up, wake them up, and get to an even higher level than I could take them before.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds pretty amazing. I mean, that's a big shift. Did they identify themselves, or how were you able to identify them? I'm curious about that.
Well, that's also interesting, is my marketing expert who writes up my copy for the different programs in this particular package, embodying the wisdom of the Ascended Masters. She said, well, that's a great idea. You should get back to your mystic roots, and that, you keep the clearing curses and all the stuff that you do now, but add that on to it. And so we were putting together a list of the people that I would want to incorporate. And I got together a list of 8 of them. And I said, okay, this is what I'm thinking. And then I put them in module form. The first module is where I do a clearing. Then it was number 2 is Buddha, 3, Mary Magdalene, 4, Lao Tzu, 5, Archangel Michael, 6, Kuan Yin, 7, Saint Germain, 8, Lakshmi, and 9, Jesus. I was saving Jesus for the end, the final, like the cleanup batter in American baseball. Mm-hmm. And then I stopped and thought about it, and I looked at all the modules, and if you know numerology, every one of them corresponds to an area that they're familiar with. I mean, Buddha, number 2, is diplomacy, and he's famous for the middle road. Mary Magdalene is communication. She's the essence of divine feminine power. Number 4 is Lao Tzu, and 4 in numerology is the balance between work and play, and that's him. He's the founder of Taoism, yin yang, work, play, getting in nature. So he was. Then I look at Archangel Michael, number 5, and 5 is freedom, and he's famous for cutting cords and freeing you from whatever afflictions and traumas you might have had in the past. 6 is domestic affairs, and that's Kuan Yin, who's the mother, the female, the woman of feels your sorrow, compassion, mercy, and compassion and mercy, basically. So, but she is about the family. Number 7, I realized that was what started it. Saint Germain, he's the holder of the 7th ray, and here he is, module 7. And number 8 is Lakshmi. 8 is about abundance and prosperity, and she's the Hindu goddess of prosperity and good fortune, of abundance and good fortune. And 9 is Jesus' completion. So I just put them in order randomly, kind of so there'd be male, female, east, west, kind of a general mixture. But the module numbers matched exactly what they're great at. So I knew that I was getting guidance from a higher source to help organize this whole package.
Right.
So
no accident.
More fun. Yeah.
No coincidence.
There's no accident. Exactly.
Yeah.
There are no accidents, and here it is. This is proof. So, this has been the most fun doing clearings and even group calls and that than I've ever had before, because I have the energy and the wisdom of the masters helping me whenever I call upon them.
Right. Do your sessions look different than they used to? Or is this just, you're just adding on to it?
I add on to it. I do my sessions. I streamline them a little bit. At the end of each session, I would normally take someone to a higher place. And then when I get them to this higher place where they're free of emotional pain, mental pain, past life trauma, inner child, everything I normally do in a session, I bring them there and they say, okay, do any of the masters appeal to you? And sometimes I already know. I say, well, I'm broke. I just lost my job. This happened. Okay, let's bring in Lakshmi, because she's the master that helps you to get real abundance, which is doing something that is spiritually fulfilling, that is also financially rewarding. So I would bring her in for that. If someone has sadness or that, I would bring in Kuan Yin to take away the sadness. Because in some of these cases, sometimes I can perceive the sadness and take it away as best I can. Other times, if I bring in Kuan Yin, she infuses her energy into the person. And then only as the energy, the sadness that is so deeply seated as it's leaving, do I feel it. That's when I can perceive it. And then I take it away the rest of the way. So
Right.
it's just adds, icing on the cake, but even goes way beyond that.
Well, for those listening, I've had a few sessions with you, Ed, and I vouch for you. I vouch for them, guys. It's an amazing session, really life changing. Well, when I mean, I can only speak for myself, but the times I went to you, there's a reason I reached out because I was going through something, in particular the most recent time, and I mean, there's a real tangible change. I can feel the energy, whatever is there that you removed. Like I could feel it leaving. It was very emotional. I mean, I was crying. It's amazing what's possible from a distance like that. But it's a real deal. Thank you.
It's true. And one thing that is new that I haven't been offering, I have a 30-day remote healing program, where usually it's better if someone gets a session first. But once they get a session, rather than have to get a session regularly, I just get them into the 30-day program. And every morning at 8 a.m. Pacific time, everyone in the group, you just carry on with your normal activity, but everyone in the group gets cleared out. The same things I do in person, I do for the entire group. And every month I bring in a different master. So this month it's Saint Germain, and I'm not sure who will be next month yet, but I'll bring in a different master. And from time to time, depending on what the group's needs, I bring in a different master to help with that issue. Like I think it was maybe a week ago on a Saturday, it was one of the worst days of June. And so I just brought in Archangel Michael to clear any entities. He does it quicker and faster than I can. So I just have him go in there.
Wow.
So that's become the most popular item I offer. And like you say, some people say, well, what do you mean? Energy at a distance? This is crazy. It's like, no, it's totally in line with the laws of physics. Look up, non-locality, that quantum physics, they talk about this. It's true. And I make my living doing it. It's not, I wouldn't have any repeat business if people weren't getting tremendous help. And sometimes it only takes one session, especially if someone's cursed, because what they ascribe to bad luck, it's not bad luck. Your luck is it's not, there's no accident. You were cursed. And once you get rid of the curse, the burden lifts from you and everything opens up. So so I have a very good track record of helping people.
Right. Yeah. And the curses are real. I've experienced one. I've been under the spell. We get the attacks coming from all angles. It's so, people like you are absolutely necessary right now during this spiritual war, this energetic war, we can call it, because it's an attack on everything: thought, awareness, integrity, like intention, everything.
Well, the spiritual war is exactly what's going on, but it's manifesting in this paradigm. What kind of paradigm of a world do you want to live in? Do you want a world where people are free, empowered, sovereign, free to do whatever you want, which is the mystic teachings, we are all single points of awareness in the oneness that is, everything. And your job is to tap into the highest aspect of your being, ideally your I am presence, bring that love and wisdom down to earth and share it with the world in your own unique way. And with over 7 billion people on our planet, there's 7 billion different ways to do it. The contrary is the way where, you should only do this. You should do this. If you were spiritual, you would do this. It's like, no, almost always whenever someone tells you this is what you should do, they're almost always wrong. You should be making your own mind up. You should do what's best for you and your family. And you don't need anyone telling you or dictating to you how you should think, act, breathe, put into your body. Any of those things, that's not the mystic treatment. That's not the mystic.
Absolutely.
Truism.
Absolutely.
Amen to that.
That goes with everyone across the board. And, influencers on the world stage, politicians, that applies everywhere. And what we see it like even within the community, and like I think you even term it on your website, like spiritual arrogance, kind of like, And it's a breakdown of that ego. And that's a part of a healing process that a lot of people are going through. The whole planet is going through that. And we see things like that as a result of it.
Yeah, and cracking some of these people's belief systems, which, the negative side, they have every advantage. They have the media, which is bombarding them 24/7 with misinformation. And I said this in one of my recent interviews, like, pretty much, well, first I tell them, turn off the TV. It doesn't matter what station you're listening to, just turn it off. But if you do listen, pretty much do the opposite of whatever they recommend.
Yes.
And you're going to be accurate 80 to 90% of the time. That's going to be better advice than they could possibly ever give you, because they have their own agenda, and the agenda is not to benefit humanity. It's to reduce the population. And, we all know that.
Mm-hmm.
And enslave further the population that is still alive. Yeah.
Absolutely.
In every way, shape, and form.
So let's talk about that, Ed. What the hell is going on right now on this planet?
Yeah.
What are you seeing? Like, I know you also receive information, downloads, whatever you want to call it. Like, what does this look like to you? What is your opinion on where things are going?
Right. Well, let me say, in the long run, humanity still has a bright future, because it's a mystic principle, the well-regarded spiritual principle, that what happens on the higher planes will eventually manifest in the physical plane. And I work on the higher planes every day, so I see what's out there. And for the most part, the higher planes are clearer than they've been. February was a very, very tough month for light carriers, the people that are trying to bring light to the planet and spread their wisdom and love to the planet. February was one of the worst months in the last 2 years. But in March 2nd, precisely, we moved up a level. And when you move up a level, it's not something dramatic, like suddenly, we're in 4D, it's totally different than 3D. No, it's like, if you can, as an analogy, say we're currently living in 3.5 to 6.5D density. And when we move up a level, we might go to 3.6 to 6.6. So the vast majority of that existence is the same, but the bottom has been dropped and we've gone up a level at the higher level. So what happened on March 2nd, when we moved up that level, we got out of reach of the lower level entities that were more of a nuisance, but just constantly attacking the light carriers. So March was relatively easy, and it's gotten a little easier. In June, like I mentioned, maybe a week and a half ago, there was another attack. So these attacks happen from time to time. For the most part, our future is bright because there's clearer and clearer skies ahead of us. So that's what we have to look forward to. But right now on Earth, there's craziness going on, and there's so many different reasons for it. There are a lot of information of things that are happening behind the scenes. No one's aware of it. They're not. Some people think they have the picture, and they do their best to share it, and it may only be half truth, even when they have a noble purpose. Other people, they're very intellectually gifted, and they don't have a window into the spiritual aspect of things. So they poo-poo anyone that talks about spirituality in that. And so even people with good intent, they're giving contradictory information, as well as all the stuff from the media is giving you opposite of the truth. So there's all these theories floating around and this and that. And it's almost impossible to figure out what's going on. And compounding this, there's timelines that have been shifting, where things that happened in the past didn't happen in other timelines. And I'll give you an example. Some people talk about this as the Mandela effect, but this has directly happened with me. My friend and I were working on a project, and he says to me, we need to get, I'll just call them A and B. A and B together. They have complementary skills. If we get these two together, this could really help our project. I said, okay. So I talked to each of them individually, and apparently they had already met, and the meeting was a big blow up. It didn't go off well at all. So we're saying, okay, well, we can't bring them together. So we waited 6 months, and my friend says, look, it's time. They should be willing to let bygones be bygones. Let's see if we can get them together again now. Maybe the animosity is cooled off. So I go back to the first person and said, hey, why don't we get together again? He goes, like, who? well, with B, don't you want to? I think it'll be. He goes, okay, I guess if you want. I said, well, didn't you meet with him once before? No, I never met with him. I said, okay. I figured he forgot. I'm thinking, oh, he forgot. The simplest explanation is usually the correct one. So then I go to B and said, oh, by the way, A forgot that you guys had met and the thing was a big blowout. So why don't we, try to get together again? And he goes, who? And I said, hey, you had this big blow up. He says, do you have a picture of him? And I whip out my cell phone and show him a picture. Here, this is him. He goes, I never met that guy.
Wow.
And it's and I realized my friend was right there with me, and we had been talking about this for 6 months. We knew everything that happened. And then we realized, the whole timeline had shifted.
Wow.
What happened on one timeline didn't happen on another. And that can explain also some of the truth warriors telling you things. They think this one thing happened, and other times they think it didn't happen, or this person's alive, or that he's not alive, or this. Both of them can be correct,
right,
based on the timeline that they're on. So that just adds confusion to everything.
It does add confusion, and this is a theme that's been coming up a lot for me, and just in the past week, even a few days in particular. But is the parallel universes, parallel timelines, where there's infinite versions of us, or however many versions of us. People say there's only eight universes. It's weird. It's interesting to me to see how people come to their conclusions. I just watched this movie. I think it's called like Stargate Alpha or something. And it's these people who accidentally discover a parallel universe, and they go there. When they try to come back, they're in another one. They keep meeting all these versions of themselves, and like one version of themselves is a murderer, and then the next, they're all different personalities. It's them, but it's an entirely different personality, different families. And I think we're seeing that on a large scale right now, like you said, with the timelines and these narratives that are going around. People are sharing information, and it resonates with a lot of people. Then there's an entirely different group that thinks that's absolutely insane. That's bullshit. That's not true. That never happened. But what if it did on another timeline? This is where it gets very confusing.
Right. So then that comes up, okay, well, what do we do with this information? How do we address it? Well, you go back to the basics of the mystic principle. Focus on the world that you want and let the timelines sort themselves out. The more energy you give to whatever timeline and to that vision that you want to create, the more likely that is to manifest. And that's what the negative is doing. They're trying to feed you this narrative based on fear and scarcity and everything negative about the human experience. And we have to combat that by visualizing things that are positive, that where everyone is abundant, everyone can do whatever they want. You can raise your family as want. You don't have to worry what they're going to do to the kid in school. All these things that the vast majority of humanity wants, across the world, not just in the United States. That's the world that people have to focus on. And there's another aspect of this, which, I help to, I'm trying to help to do that by helping all the people that are with me. That every time you raise your vibration, you go up a level, say 1 level, you're increasing your power exponentially, like 10 times. You go up 2 levels, 100 times, 3 levels, 1,000 times. So that explains why these avatars can have the influence of millions of people, because they might only be 6 or 7 levels up, but that means you're 1,000,000 times more powerful. And with 1,000,000 times more powerful, vision you have is going to be 1,000,000 times. Well, we're not avatars, but if you're at 3 levels up, you're going to have 1,000 times or 10,000 times more power than the average person on the street who's unconscious. And so it's not one person, one vote. It's your spiritual power gives you the vote and what vision we want to create of the world. So the higher you raise your vision, the more positive you are, the more you get rid of anger, fear, all those things that are weighing you down, the more power you have. And so that occurred to me 25 years ago. Like, you can't beat the city hall by having more money because they print it whenever they want. You can't beat them by having a better TV show or whatever because they control all the mass media. and they censor people that have real truth. So you can't beat them that way. The only avenue that's open is the spiritual avenue. And that's the way where we have the tremendous advantage, because they can't go to those levels. If they go to those levels, the dissonance is too intense for them. They don't want it. They're doing everything possible to keep you at these lower levels through fear and anger and that holding on to these negative emotions. So you can't do that. But that just means, the entire world is ascending. So we're going with the stream. We're flowing with the stream. We're ascending in vibration. We're becoming more and more powerful daily. They're not. They're at their peak, and that's why all this stuff is coming out all of a sudden, because they know there's no way they can withstand the real Great Awakening. They have to do things, and they make tons of mistakes, and they do things that are crazy. So it's becoming more and more obvious.
Right. They're
nailed it.
Yeah, making the mistakes. Like I said this, I get tired of saying this, but they shoot themselves in the foot every step of the way.
Yeah, right.
And it's becoming so obvious now. They're literally falling off of bicycles.
Waking people up.
Yeah,
they're waking people up. Everything they do, because they're so desperate. It's almost like it became a self-fulfilling vicious circle for them, where like they got more desperate, so they started becoming more extreme and more obvious, which woke more people up, which made them more desperate, which makes them do the same thing even more. And it's become this vicious circle that they're almost like caught in, that they can't help but do that, because that's just who they're terrified. Because underneath everything there is just pure fear that these beings have, and they're terrified of us, because they know we have the real power and the light has the real power, and they're just feeding it.
Right. And that's all they know. Like I just talked about this in the interview I did. They're like addicted to the third dimension, because there's things here that there's pleasures here that they like that unfortunately are very sickening. But they're literally programmed to operate a certain way. And that's exactly what we see, by them performing these rituals and working with these demons and whatever else is black magic. That's all they know. So even if we defeat them, it doesn't mean like they're going to stop living that way. Like there's an entire process that has to happen, in my opinion. Like, because we always hear we've already won, but it just has to play out, because time doesn't exist and all this stuff. But I feel like, even though we might on paper have won, there's still like a physical adaptation that has to happen on the planet before it becomes visible.
Right. I think by having it so slow and waiting for more and more people to awaken, everyone is being given that choice at some point in their life where they say, wait a second, this is not the kind of world I want. And they suddenly switch to the positive side, the light. But by stretching it out, more and more people are being awakened. So part of it, you have to have a certain critical mass to do things in the physical world. But part of it is just the chance to awaken more people by letting them see exactly. Whatever. I could talk about all the craziness and stupidity that we see every day.
Right.
Who would think that is anything is logical?
No, there is no logic. So I'm going to go back to the parallel timeline, the parallel universe or whatever. You said that you brought these people together and they never even had met, but you swear you've already done it. What does that mean to you? Like, does that mean that like the entire collective has shifted, or was this a personal thing? Like, what's your theory surrounding that?
Well, I think that the higher beings are helping us to shift timelines constantly, because it's beyond my capability to know how to switch a timeline. But to my credit and my friend's credit, we were kind of above the switch in timelines enough that we could see it. It was crystal clear. We were discussing it regularly. So we weren't stuck in the depths of what happened, where we, in their case, he talked about the terrible meeting, and then the next timeline, he had no knowledge of it whatsoever. Same thing would be. So they were wrapped up in the actual 3D world and that timeline. We were, in one sense, surfing the timelines and saw that there were two different timelines. So that was a credit. And I think it's mostly a function of the higher your vibration, the more you can see these different timelines. but there are beings that are above us that are helping us, Pleiadians, Arcturians, Sirians, lion beings. There's so many great races and from other star systems that are helping us, that they don't have to show up on the UFO disclosure channel or anything like that. They're here, and you can't see them. You're not going to see them in the 3D world. We have to wait until we get to a higher world. But in the meantime, they communicate with us, and they help to steer us in the direction where the timelines are more helpful to those trying to help the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm optimistic because now I got ascended masters, helping all my people. This is amazing and so much fun for me.
Yeah, and well, that's great news. That's great news that so many people ask that question all the time, like where's the help? Do we have help? Like, are they here? Or then there's a whole question of free will. Are they allowed to intervene unless we ask? I almost wonder if we're at a point now where that's kind of like not the rule anymore. They're just like showing up. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a very good question. This is a question that I had from myself, because people would say, well, do you have permission to help my husband or my daughter? If you haven't, I haven't asked them explicitly. And, if they're full of demons, are you allowed to work on them? And for a while there, I was wondering. I said, I just felt like I had some kind of a dispensation that would allow me to do these things. And then I talked to this guy who is like a kind of a modern day Jedi. He basically, Jedi is a real thing. It's not just George Lucas didn't just make that up, but a mystery school. And anyway, he goes, you're a Jedi, he said, and your job, just like George Lucas says, is to bring balance to the Force. So he said, you don't have a dispensation that allows you to get rid of these demons. That's your job. That's what you're supposed to do. You were put here on Earth to get rid of these demons, to bring balance to the Force so that people can have free will. So that it was, not tormenting me, but it was like a little uneasy. Should I do this? And I almost always, what's best for everyone, I get rid of demons is almost always a good idea. So I just get rid of them.
Wow.
And then, in the past, there's a famous avatar who got cast out demons all the time. That's Jesus. No one said, well, does he have free will? Should he do this? No, that's his job. He's throwing out demons. He has the right, or the knowledge to do it, and he did it. And so that's what I feel like I'm trying to follow in that footsteps as a Jedi in common vernacular to do exactly that. So that's how I answer it.
Right. And I think it's important to understand, there are beings here helping us, but we're also those beings. I feel like we were the higher dimensional beings that incarnated here because we knew this could only be won from the inside. It's like an inside job. So it couldn't have happened just by showing up and having a space battle with these people. It had to be done from the inside. And what better way to incarnate on a planet, and not even with no memory of why you're here, and discovering that, and then tapping into that. It couldn't be any more authentic that way. And that's how the real shift occurs, because you're physically tangibly changing the vibration. It's noticeable. It becomes potent to where we walk around in certain situations and we're just like antennas, and we can feel right away when something's off, and that's a gift. You don't really, I guess we all have it, but you're not aware of that until you start this journey.
Right. That's all true. And it's the same thing with all these people awakening. If a couple of avatars came to Earth and they said, okay, let's put all the pedophiles in jail. Let's take this away. Let's reveal everything. What's going to happen in a year from now? The same people that were asleep are going to be asleep in a year, and there are going to be new ones taking advantage of them and telling them lies, and there'll be no growth. So it has to be stretched out, and they have to see for themselves what is it like to live in a communist world. Well, now you know. So should we believe them? Well, what do you think? Every single thing they've done has been to hurt the country and the world. You think it's not because someone's got dementia, it's because it's intentional to do everything to ruin the country. And once you figure that out, and once you figure out that they're literally trying to reduce the population, everything is easy to understand. Everything makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then, okay, don't listen, turn off the news, at least turn it off so you don't get fill your mind with mental poison.
Well,
Yes.
and it's not only just that, it's not the information, it's also the frequencies that are emitted, that they project through the television set and through the radio and the towers and stuff. There's frequencies that program you subconsciously, subliminally, and, and that's how the subliminal messaging, that's psychology 101,
And they go to another step beyond that by injecting things into your body, nanobots that are programmable, that will receive signals. The original plan was for 5G. That was for most part shut down. But other communication satellites, there's other ways to send internet, ways to get these signals to people to make them either more docile or more angry or however you want to program them. Mm-hmm. If you have the computer in you that's receiving the input saying, okay, get angry now, and then everyone's angry. If you have a protest, in Portland or somewhere, they put that stuff in there and they beam the signal and say, okay, anger, start fighting, start the riot.
Right.
So, but luckily on a spiritual level, that's something that nanobots can be shut down without having to, physically intervene in a person.
Yeah. And part of not part of their entire goal is to create as many things as possible that cuts our connection off with source. And that's exactly what they're trying to do with the jab, but not just with that, with the food, with the television, like everything promotes anti-life, something opposite of any spiritual connection. They want you to think we just happen to evolve here and there's no meaning to anything. And,
worship materialism as well. We're so material, 3D material focused that that's all that exists. And people worship that basically and are obsessed with the 5 sense reality. Well, can cut off from spirit. Exactly what you said.
100%. And they also, like you said, Ed, they pump they'll pump a frequency into a crowd and they'll agitate everybody and then they'll cause a riot or whatever. But at the same time, they're harvesting that emotional release. Yep.
Right.
And they're done in specific areas. So it affects the AI grid, or the ley lines or whatever it is that's surrounding our planet. I mean,
we're the batteries.
This is an example where the higher beings say, well, that's like cheating. You can't use technology and then put a cloud around the entire planet that has a malaise that causes everyone to become demoralized and sometimes even more focused in spiritual meccas, things like that. They just put this malaise over the place and everyone just feels lethargic and they don't want to do anything. Well, the higher beings will get rid of that when it's brought to their attention, when one of us their agents on the ground says, hey, we got this problem here in this city, can we just get rid of the malaise? And okay, we get rid of it. We have the free will, but our free will is to just give people freedom, sovereignty. And so we're doing that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And the infrastructure is also set up to assist that, unfortunately, like the obelisk and the towers and even churches and sporting arenas and whatever else it might be. It's all designed to funnel that energy into the ley lines, into the grid. And there's evidence of this if you know where to look. And so that is also happening at the same time. And if you notice, they're at the Vatican, there's an obelisk, and where they are strategically located around the world, and then the events and the turmoil that take place near that,
why CERN is in the location it's in is very strategically placed for that reason. Stuff like that.
Well, a lot of the times when they're trying to generate the negative energy in order to take advantage of this setup, they may take them a week to set up this ritual, and they're finally, when they're ready for the ritual, the good guys may be notified of it and we shut it right down. So the good news is it may take them a week to set up for this evil ritual, and then it takes 15 minutes to shut it all down. And then they're like, what happened? Where's that? We can't do this. So there's a lot of that sort of stuff going on behind the scenes as well. So a lot of the worst things that of course, they have their own holidays to where they do things, and so the
right,
good guys know about this too.
They operate in an entirely different calendar than we do.
Right.
Yep.
What was I just going to say? What were we talking about?
So it seems like they're trying to, obviously we talked about manipulate us into creating the reality that they want, but it seems like a timeline war too, where they're trying to lock as many humans into the lower timeline, like the negative timeline as possible.
Right.
With
Well, everything's a timeline war. I mean,
that's another way of looking at it, I guess.
It's a fancy way of saying their paradigm versus the more positive paradigm. The more positive paradigm is at a higher vibration, that where more people are free, where everyone's got joy, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. They get to do all that. It's not a communist totalitarian state where they dictate what you can and can't think.
And the transhumanism that goes along with that, and the AI that goes along with that. Yeah, it's almost like they know they can't ascend like we can.
Right.
They're stuck in these lower levels, so they're trying to like keep as many of the batteries for them, which is what they use us as possible, so they can stay alive and keep their little slave farm going. It's like that's what they're trying to lock down as many of us as possible, and that's why such the strong push for the jab. I feel like that's the main component they're using right now for that agenda.
Right. And that's an interesting thing that it came out a year ago, but it was news to me because I'm spiritually monitoring, okay, which one's the worst, which one's the best. And I had my pecking order, but then sometimes it would seem to switch and I couldn't understand how is that. And then someone pointed out that every one of these manufacturers has different lots, and the different lots have different ingredients, and their emergency youth authorization, it lets them change the ingredients. Like it's not even the same thing. So it's like you got approved for one thing and they can just switch out and give you something else.
Change it to whatever.
So that's why some lots are better. Some are, placebos. Some, the person dies walking home from the clinic.
Right.
But why it's a Russian roulette. Who wants to take a chance on that? I mean, especially when there's no upside.
You know, what's interesting about, I'm going to go back to the rituals you were talking about. It takes them so long to build up and do a ritual. By the time they do it, you've already caught on. They don't even I heard Max Spears talking about this. He's like, they don't need those rituals anymore to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish, but they're addicted to this old world order, this old way of doing things. It's like a tradition. But now you just proved that by them being stuck in their old ways, they're showing their hand. They're showing their hand, and it's allowing you to, counter before it even happens, or allowing us to counter before it even happens, because they're just so locked into that timeline and that old way of doing things where they're trying to live as long as possible so they don't have to face their karma, which is inevitably coming at the end of their life or their transition.
Yeah, they have that belief where if they tell you what they're going to do, then there will be no karmic consequence. And that's total BS. That's a good way to recruit their own, adherents to follow their thing. Oh, you're going to avoid karma. And we have a, what's it called? The cremation of care. Yeah, the ceremony that they do in one particular forest in California. Cremation of care.
Grove. Yeah. That one grove.
That one grove where they're trying to eliminate any morality that you might have and say, wait a second, this is harming people. We have to get rid of that, any care you might have there. So we're going to do this ritual to take that away from you. Well, it doesn't matter. They're all going to be stuck with this karmic consequence no matter what. It doesn't say, hey, I'm going to punch you in the face. And then if you're stupid enough to let me do it, then that's your fault. No, you can't do that. You can't just tell someone that you're going to do this and harm them. That's karma. There's karmic consequences to that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to shift gears a little bit and get into, okay, like when you do a session, obviously you're helping that person connect with their higher selves and a number of things, clearing all the traumas and cutting cords and whatever the case may be. But everyone right now, I think any advice would be helpful right now for people trying to do this work for real and become that inner warrior, unlock the master within, or as you say it.
Right.
Like there's certain things like I think people make it more difficult than it has to be because it seems like such a hard thing to accomplish. And I was just wondering if you could touch on, any modalities or any advice or
Right.
what that looks
Okay.
like for
Well,
you.
we can give them an infusion of energy, and that will clear them. So anyone listening to your podcast will be cleared. I'll do that. But first, just common sense things. You exist as a being on all these different levels. You're a physical being, but you also have emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies of increasingly higher vibration. So you want to clear out every one of these. So your physical body, don't put poisonous things or experimental cocktails into your body. Don't eat GMO food. Keep good food so that you're not polluting your physical body. At the mental body, don't hang out with people that are always complaining or always have a problem for every solution. Just don't hang out with them. If they're family members, you might be stuck, but tell them to shut up. I don't want to hear your problems.
Yeah.
Aunt Edith, look, if you're going to complain, then you stay home. You're not coming over for Thanksgiving, whatever the occasion is.
Mm-hmm.
If you're welcome to come, but I don't want to hear any complaints. So don't pollute your emotional body. And mental body, we talked about it. Turn off the TV. I mean, there's a reason they call it programming. They're filling your head with non-truths and that frequency that makes you more mentally docile. It puts you into an alpha state, and then they not just give you commercials for things you don't need. Many of them are pharmaceutical products now, but turn off, clean your mental body. And the spiritual body, meditate, connect with nature, or, do the kind of things that I do, energy healing, where you can clear out that and connect with your higher self. and then that makes you a clean channel to, there's other things you can do. Past life traumas, there's people around you that might need to be cleared out. As a child, a lot of people have all this anger they bottled up and buried because they didn't know how to deal with it as a kid. I take all that away. So those are extra bonuses. But for the first part, don't keep adding to the problem by filling your being with poison at whatever level it is. And if you want, I can go through what I would normally do in a clearing for everyone listening to the podcast. I'll do a quick version of it if you'd like.
Yeah.
So they can listen and everyone will get a benefit.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Clear us, dust us off.
I mean, you two are going to be okay, but everyone listening now is going to benefit from this. And I have now like a 20-point standard operating procedure that I go through when I have my team. Because when I do the group every morning, I can't do every individual by his or herself. I have to do the group as a whole. And so they help me. As long as I demonstrate the proficiency in doing whatever I'm doing, then they'll do it for me. That's like the agreement for me. If it's something new, then I have to prove that I can do it, and then they'll do it for me. But anyway, this is what I asked the team to do. So I'm going to do it for everyone listening to this podcast. First, we're going to clear everyone's emotional body. So I don't know exactly the individuals who are going to listen, but I can feel their emotional anger and frustration and sadness. I'm just going to take it all away. And there's some entities there that are screaming at me because they feed off that negative emotional energy. That's like an ATM machine for them. So if they can trigger you to feel anger, then they take advantage of that. Okay, so I'll just clean the emotional bodies of everyone listening. Now we'll clear the mental bodies. And of course, my team is the one doing all the hard work. But I'm monitoring what's going on. So their mental bodies, so you don't filled with anger or frustration, which are mental constructs. Okay, clear everyone's higher self. This is something people from the time of Atlantis, they at the time then, our consciousness was much higher than it is today. Then it came down. Now we're on our way back up again, but we're coming in contact with that. It's like a well that went to Atlantis that was poisoned from what happened there. So a lot of people need to be clear to that. Because when they have that, a lot of times they sabotage themselves. Okay, now we're going to clear everyone who's listening, any non-physical entities. So now they're screaming at me. I won't say the word. Their favorite word is mother, something. So they're screaming at me. So every non-physical entities, and I'm going to get rid of, I'm not going to list anything that I've already identified that we can take care of. We don't need to list everything, every possible thing, but from past, present, or future timelines, anything that made contact with anyone within 72 hours of watching this podcast. And we're going to get rid of anything that's not of the same DNA, excluding any organ transplants, and anything that's not of the same I am presence. Anything that consumes light, anything that uses false or reflective light. So they're going to be cleared of entities. We'll clear any implants from everyone watching. Okay. I'm going to shut down all portals of anyone in their immediate area, because sometimes they create these artificial portals where they're able to send in to these negative entities much more easily. Like having a doorway in your home that's wide open, they send the entities in. So we're just going to close all those portals. We're going to clear any curses, hexes, spells, tie up any magicians doing these things to all the people listening to your podcast. I can already feel kind of like a future. Everyone listening, their heart is opening up and there's all this love pouring in already. I don't know if you can feel that as well, but I feel it. Okay, we're going to clear any nanobots from people and from their ambient environment. Okay, clear AI from people, from their electronics, surveillance, satellites, networks, storage devices, any ambient AI. Okay, we're going to also clear toxins that people may have taken in through unknowingly taking whatever substances into their body, experimental cocktails. Let's clear that out from everyone. Okay. And anyone who did get this particular disease, I'm going to send, this was really interesting, hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin energy. You don't need to take it physically to have the benefit of it. So we'll give everyone that for prophylactic uses as well. Okay, to everyone in their homes as well. So their families, everyone living in their home, including their pets. And if there's any malaise overlying their city, let's get rid of that too. Anyone who's tuned in and taps into that, let's clear the malaise over their city. Okay, now I'm going to raise everyone who's listening to this just to a higher place. Okay, and let's bring in one of the masters. You have any preference of all the people I mentioned?
Whoever's there, whoever's willing.
Well, Jesus is always my go-to. So let's ask him, please infuse your energy, the Christ consciousness, and unconditional love into anyone listening to this podcast. Oh man, those entities that are kind of on the outskirts, they hate that. Okay, and that just took us to an even higher level. Okay, well that's going to be a big help for everyone who listens.
Wow, thank you.
Tell them.
Thank you for that. And then, I mean, it is helpful.
Amazing.
It is helpful, and we need more of that on a collective level, Well, and I think it's great. Yeah, I thought of while you were doing that. Whenever I had a session with you, I was under a curse apparently, or under a spell, and you had got to my higher self, and you were kind of surprised to see that even my higher self was contaminated. That's the word you used. Right. Okay. And and then you saw me not trusting my higher self or my own intuition at that time, which was true. And I think that's very interesting because it never occurred to me that your higher self could be contaminated via one of these curses. How often do you see that?
Well, yeah, it wasn't necessarily due to the curse. You had both. Okay. The curse is one thing. That's the worst thing anyway. But for old souls from the time of Atlantis, here's an analogy: like visualize a well filled with water, the water level representing the level of consciousness. Well, back then the consciousness level was much higher. Then the water level went down, the consciousness went down, and now we're on our way up again. We're on the upswing. But as we come in contact with that well that was polluted from what happened in Atlantis, and so some of the information, the guidance that you're getting, you think, I'm not really sure I can rely on this. And in your case, as a former Atlantis person, you said you were correct. You can't rely on it because it was contaminated. But once that's cleared out, you don't have to worry about that again, for thousands of years. It took 10,000 years. You had this contamination. Now it's gone. So it's going to be thousands of years, and you're going to have a better connection with your higher self now than you've had for thousands of years. And this also goes for everyone listening to the podcast. We cleared that. It's a very easy thing to clear. But like you, I didn't even know that was possible. It was my friend who I consult with from time to time. He said, look, I understand sometimes people need their higher self cleared. And I was trying to meditate to figure it out. And that's when I saw that well analogy came to me. One of the beings, showed me that was what was wrong. So yeah, you had two things going against you.
Right. Yeah, I was a mess. Admittedly, I mean, hey, man, we all go through hard times and stuff happens, and I'm grateful for people like you. I've recently heard the same thing about the Akashic records, and I don't know, just take any of this information coming through with a grain of salt. But I was just reading something where somebody was trying to claim that the Akashic records had been contaminated also. So a lot of the information people were getting from that, they couldn't trust. I don't know if that is like the dark trying to deceive people. It gets very confusing, like you said earlier.
Right. Probably the real Akashic records are fine, but they can give you a false image or a distortion of what information is coming through. So anyway, I don't work very closely with any of that.
Right.
I'm more focused what's going on right now. And now as we move to the 5D world, where all time is simultaneous, you can't be looking in the past or future or what's going to happen. You got to focus on what's going on now. And what I have noticed is some people, the more advanced they are, the ones that are operating more frequently in that hot 5D world, they're more susceptible to having infiltrators and things like that from other lifetimes, because it just seems easier for it to come in. So that's one of the things that I'm doing. I'm clearing them from other past, present, future timelines, and that would include other lifetimes.
So you mean like as people raise their vibration, they're actually more susceptible to the infiltration because of who they're becoming, I guess? Yeah.
Well, you're as a 5D being, you exist in all these different levels and all these different times at the same time. So your past life 200 years ago, where if you may have been under major attack, that can affect you in this lifetime. Mm-hmm. It's harder if you're in just your 3D world. You may have inclinations to do certain things, but when you're in the 5D world, it's more of a wide open gate. But I'm clearing everyone out at that level as well. Mm-hmm. So don't forbear to go to a higher world because you think you're going to run into more trouble. No,
right.
Well, they go to that world no matter what.
The war doesn't stop in the third dimension. We're battling in every dimension right now, and that's this, and everything begins here in the 3D. And until things change here, it literally has a ripple effect, and it'll start clearing out. Once things start to be cleared out here, it clears out the other dimensions and the other densities. And I feel like that's why so many of them have so much interest in us right now, because we're at the heart of this.
It's more the opposite, where the clear out the higher densities, and then the higher density comes down to the 3D world, and then you're clear in the 3D world as well.
Okay.
There may be some, blowback kind of from what's going on in the 3D world affecting you on these other higher density, and the 3D world includes emotions and mental, beliefs as well.
Right.
But the most important thing is to be operating from the highest aspect of yourself, and then have that energy come down. And then, and the higher you go in the spiritual war, in the physical world, you have political battles, you have physical battles, political battles, legal battles. On the higher planes, you have spiritual battles. And whoever goes to the higher vibration wins every battle in this consensual reality where these things are taking place. whoever can go to the higher world wins. I mean, they could try to harm me, but if I'm at a higher vibration, I can just pick them up and throw them across the room, just like in the Matrix. So it's just more and more reasons to connect with that higher aspect of yourself. The higher you're vibing, the more power you have to create the world you want, the more easily you can manifest things. Every single aspect of your life is better the higher your vibration is. And how do you do that? Clear out all the things, just like I said earlier, from the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies. Clear that all out so it's not weighing you down. And then, do exercises like we just did here from people you trust that have a track record of doing good things. And, I just gave this to everyone listening as a gift. It's like, here, do this. I mean, that this would be a very valuable, module in any.
I guess my point was by mentioning that was it's all connected. It's all tied together. Like either it's the upper levels affecting the lower levels or vice versa. It's all affecting each other, right. And no one can move on until it's all cleared simultaneously. Like it's a constant battle, and it's been a battle for eons, and that's why they say, it just doesn't end when you die. That's why committing suicide doesn't work.
Doesn't help.
Right. You can't really escape it,
Well, and that's a good point. I mean, this is not funny, but people, I'm clearing them and I'll go and look at their parents as well. In many cases, their parents have already passed on, but sometimes the parents are cursed. So you got to take the curse away from the father or mother, whoever might be cursed, so that they can move on to the higher worlds. So that kind of work helps them immensely to do that. And so other times I'll tune into someone they're already dead, and they can be raging angry, and which is another way of keeping people anchored to the lower spiritual realms, because that anger just weighs them down. So you get rid of the anger, and that lets them go to the higher worlds again. Sometimes they're already at peace with themselves. And someone interviewed me, and he says, well, of course they're at peace with themselves. They're already dead. I said, well, no, that's not true at all. It's like they can be at peace with themselves, and most of the time they're not, to be honest, my experience. But it can also help immensely because their mental body is still around, and it's still just pre-processing that thing that got them angry. Whatever it was, I hate that guy, and I'm going to get him someday. I don't know why. It's like, it's not doing you any good. You're dead. Let's get rid of the anger.
Traumas that you haven't healed are going to stay. It doesn't cure you of that immediately.
Well, that's why there's the phrase, death isn't the cure for ignorance. You still don't, even just because you died doesn't mean you're all just going to be all knowing or all of a sudden
enlightened suddenly.
Like that's not the case. Like you're still at the same level. You're
just not in the body.
Right.
And you might be more aware slightly because of that.
Right.
It's not
you might be more aware of who you are, but you're not going to be any further along in your soul's evolution.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. That's good. People should understand that.
Right. Well, and then obviously a lot of those thoughts, the suicidal thoughts and stuff, aren't even their own thoughts. And that's when you have to learn how to identify when a thought is yours and when it's not. And that's how a lot of these addictions work and all that stuff. They can put these thoughts or these cravings, like if an entity takes over you, you're taking on that entity's cravings and their thoughts. And if you don't know that you're carrying it around, this thing could be working through you for years, and you'll be clueless to it until it's gone. You never know you're under a spell until you're not under a spell.
Until you're free. Yeah, that's common in alcoholics. I said, well, why did you have another drink when you already knew you were bombed? And as well, that voice in my head said, go ahead. No one will notice. Have another drink. And people think, like they're making up these imaginary demons. They're not imaginary. They're real. And so you clear them out. And then sometimes the urge to drink it's dramatically lessen. And a lot of people with schizophrenia, they're not crazy. They're actually extra sensitive. And where most people can't hear the voice in their head, they hear it. And so the voice in their head, and they say, there's like a voice in my head telling me to do this or that. It's like two people running my life. And you get rid of the entity in the person. It's like I've had people leave institutions, like they won't let them out right away because they say, wait, it's a good day, but we can't just let them out. We have to see and monitor them for a week or two. And eventually they get let out because the voice in their head is gone. So it's, this is like the medical profession. I'm not a fan of it. So when I'm not a doctor, I always disavow any giving people medical advice. But it's like operating in the Stone Age. They want to give them drugs to numb the awareness that lets them hear the other voices. That's the same awareness that lets you connect with your higher self and ascended masters and everyone else. You don't want to take that away from someone. That's a gift. You want to get rid of the intruder, and then bam, that person's more likely to move up than the average person who's totally unconscious.
Right. Well, and we know, like we said earlier, that's all by design. They don't want to. They don't want to help us. That's what the whole industry is literally designed to do. Now, I'm not speaking for everyone who goes to school, signs up to be a doctor or a nurse or work in that field, because a lot of people are good-hearted, well-intentioned, and they don't understand. They don't understand the lies yet, and they don't understand the indoctrination of what they're learning. And that's where the trick is, and that's why they're some of the hardest people to convince, because, they spent $100,000 on going to school for 6 years to learn something that's not true,
Right. Yeah. I had one client whose friends, one of them was a lawyer who's a free anti-mandate lawyer. And his wife was teaching at a hospital in New York City. And so he was fine. I cleared him out, no problem. He's helping the world. She was fighting me tooth and nail like a little kid. The little kid, he says, I don't want to listen to you. I don't want to hear what you have to say. I said, well, if you would wake up and you could help so many people from your position to tell them that this, medical course of action that everyone's recommending as standard procedure is harmful, you would really be able to help people. I don't want to hear you. I will not listen to you. He was so indoctrinated. It was like a little kid.
Programmed response. Exactly.
Yeah. And I just talked to her recently, and she didn't get back to me. I said, do you know whatever happened to her? Because a lot of times I plant seeds, and sometimes those seeds can germinate, and maybe she'll have a little, opening of the mind.
Right. I like your impression of the robot, by the way.
And that was just like it was, like a little kid. I'm not listening to you.
Right.
It was exactly like that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's what we see, but that's all by design. We have to hold space for some of these people, because like I said, when you're under a spell or you are programmed, so you can break up this entire reality into a bunch of different programs and simulations and timelines. And when you're not in one, you can clearly see it for what it is. And that's just what's going on right now. So we have to remember to hold space for these people. And hopefully that something happens that snaps them out of it and starts, enhancing their awareness.
I'm hoping that happens with everyone. That was my request to Jesus on January 2nd. I want to wake people up, and he's like listening, and he calls in the masters, so they're on board with that. So we've got help from the highest of the highest levels to make this possible.
So you called him in on January 2nd, and he didn't even do anything about the January 6th insurrection. Come on, Jesus.
Yeah. Where have you been?
Yeah, no. That whole thing, if you want an example of the show, the illusion, that's exactly what that is. I mean, you could never tune into that hearing and be perfectly fine. All this stuff they create so many different problems in so many different areas that they stop people from being able to even fight for the truth, because they have them fighting about so many other little things that have no place. They have no place here in this place. It's all they're just plopping things down randomly, and they're getting people to fight about them. And then no one who's fighting those battles or who's spending their time analyzing the January 6th trials or whatever, like you're not doing anything for anyone at that point, not even yourself. Like you have to learn how to see through all that stuff. It's
right.
but it's all designed
no,
to keep. Yeah.
It should be answered in one sentence. Are you talking about the unarmed insurrection?
Right.
Yeah.
Is
Exactly.
that in a land where 44% of households have guns? You think that someone started an insurrection with no guns? Is that your point?
That
Right.
we're let in, that we're let in by the guards
Right.
on video,
Right.
that we've all
And
seen
directed
as proof.
to where to go.
To the building. It was not an insurrection.
Right.
And it
And then
was
the one guy,
unarmed and
luckily we were able to see, thanks to the video by BLM activist John Sullivan, who sold his footage to CNN and 2 other media outlets. And he was also arrested and was let go 3 days later, even though he was in there, even though he took video. That's the video that they were using. It's like, okay, does this make any sense whatsoever? Is this how like an insurrection would ever work?
They don't. That's the thing. They don't care if it makes sense or not. At this point, it's just they're just.
You lie to people enough, it's the Nazi tactic. They're going to believe it. They keep calling it an insurrection, and it was so terrible.
Well,
then people just believe that.
What we're seeing right now is proof that the Germans won World War II.
Yeah.
Or the Nazis won World War II. Well, I mean, seriously, like they came here immediately and infiltrated us with Project Paperclip. And then we have these paperclip scientists and whoever else. They're embedded in the top corporations all over the country, and now they're running the country. So they're running the show from the inside. And what better way? Like I said, it has to be an inside job. So what better way to just publicly admit defeat and you lost the war, but then really you have the upper hand the entire time. And when the time's right, just like now, that's whenever they just flip the script, and here we are seeing exactly the result of what losing World War II looks like.
Right.
Yep. The cabal infiltration, which they do with everything. Of course, they're going to infiltrate the most powerful country on the planet. Like, of course they are.
Right.
So, we see it clearly. Yeah. And this administration and the people running this country right now, like everything they do is so obvious to the people that are awake that it's like directly against not only this country, but all of humanity, and directly for their own power and control. Every single thing. Well,
and let's not forget about all the help we were talking about earlier that's here. This isn't, we're not losing this.
But it's waking up people. It's a double-edged thing that they're shooting themselves in the foot every time they do something. We were talking about before. Like it's waking up people, and it's for our own growth, as well. Even those of us that are awake, and we're able to be the change. We're able to be the ones to help and to affect the planet, instead of all of us relying on these external authorities and governments to make everything good for us.
Right.
So
yeah.
Well, yeah, I like General Flynn's idea, like act locally will have a global impact. If you don't want some man dressed as a woman flashing himself to your kindergarten, child, do something about it. Act locally.
Well, and that's just it too. Even like we're always talking about the UFO, secret space program, the paranormal, all that stuff. What's going on in space? Like, what's this disclosure going to look like? All these different beings and all this stuff. It's all great. But I feel like what happens sometimes we're so focused on space and like everything outside of this planet. Like no one knows even what's going on in their own neighborhood. And they're trying to figure out what's going on in Venus, which is great. It's all fascinating. We need to know about all of it, but we can't just like throw the towel in down here.
We're here, so we need to have most of the focus here. Exactly.
Well, and you live on all these different dimensions, all these different densities. So you're also a physical body. You have to eat, and you have to make sure your surrounding area is clear to these demonic influences.
Right. And if you do want to help, like it's so important to understand that there's no wrong way to go there's no wrong way to do it. Especially the spiritual practices and stuff. So many people think they're doing it wrong because it doesn't look like what the other people are doing, but there's no wrong way to do it as long as the intention is there,
Yep. No, I'm a woman most of my meditations are or visualizing things. And someone said to her, she goes, "Oh, that's like a beginner meditations. You shouldn't have it. You should empty your mind. You shouldn't even listen to a guided meditation. That's like for beginners." And she says, "What does you mean by that?" I said, "Look, some of the most advanced teachers on the planet do guided meditations." I said, "That's idiocy. Don't let some idiot with spiritual arrogance infused with that arrogance tell you what to do. If it works, stick with the program that's working. With my meditations, there's a bunch of energy you're getting as well. So that's better in some ways than just trying to have an empty mind. You can play it with my voice with the music turned all the way down so that you don't even hear my voice or the music, and you're going to get energy pouring through. Then you can listen. You can do that whatever meditation he thinks is good. It's an advantage. So, but don't let some idiot tell you what you should do. That's one of the examples. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Right.
So.
Right. And we see that, and we do see that a lot, unfortunately. Everybody, there's always this like underlying, everyone needs to be right. They need to be right, and they want to feel like it's almost like an authority complex. Like people want they want to feel like they're better or they know more than someone else. And by
ego,
right.
It's all ego based.
Exactly.
Someone to tell you you're wrong.
Right.
A ton of that.
Yeah. People ask me, well, is this compatible? And I'll just tune into the person there. They seem fine. Yep. They seem fine. There's no negative there. This should make you a better healer, a better Reiki master, or better. There's no conflict with anything that's good. It's going to elevate your vibration.
Well, the competition needs to be taken out of everything. Right. That's the problem, and that is the programming. We're programmed to be in competition from a young age. With the sports and everything else, and so then that whenever you're not fully healed and you start these spiritual practices. And you start your own channel, you start your own modalities. And if you find yourself getting jealous of others or the need to be right or validated, that should be the red flag for you that like, hey, why am I getting triggered? And sit with that and try and get past that and ask yourself, why is this happening? And how can I heal? Yeah.
Yeah. When I was a little kid, I loved baseball, all sports, but especially baseball. I brought my baseball mitt to bed with me. I would throw the ball up and down in bed until I had to, it was too dark to see the ball. I read every biography by every superstar in baseball, and now I can't deal with it anymore. Once all the professional leagues went woke, that was the end of it. I can't support them. I can't. I don't want anything to do with it.
Not to mention the reality that most of it's rigged, if not all of it is rigged. Anyway. And then that's a really interesting rabbit hole to find out like the elites that are actually running the show behind the professional sports, in particular the NBA, and just some of the black magic that goes on there. And it even goes down to the bloodlines and some of the most top athletes. I'm hearing now, like they're clones, it's just hilarious. Like they're creating these super soldiers to put into these sports and basically dominate, and then they like somebody like Tom Brady, you have to wonder about him. Like he seems like an experiment to me. It's just, I don't know. Anyway, we can go on and on with that rabbit hole.
But I don't want to listen to the political diatribes and that from any of these pro leagues anymore. So I don't, I go out and hike in nature. That's my sport. Hiking, climbing up mountains, not rigorous, piton climbing, but just going uphill. That's climbing enough for me. But that's fun. You're in nature. Pine forest is my favorite. I mean, I told people, pine forest, pineal glands. Do you think there's a connection? Yes, that's very stimulating to the pineal gland to be in a pine forest. So, get out there, get out in nature, wherever you are.
Yes.
I have a pine tree air freshener upstairs. I'm going to open that baby up.
There you go. Pine tree air freshener.
Well, Ed, this has been great, man. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been some very valuable information. Can you please let people know your website, where they can find you?
Right. Just go to energycenterclearing.com. And the one-on-one session is known as Higher Self-Integration. There's a menu on the menu bar, Higher Self-Integration. And also there's the 30-day remote program is also on that menu bar. But just go to energycenterclearing.com. You'll get an option to download a free Escaping the Matrix audiobook. So you can sign up there. And once you get on that, you'll be alerted to the other services and that I provide. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it, guys. Thank you so much for the clearing for us and everybody earlier.
Yes.
Keep doing what you do, man. It's great stuff. And hopefully we can, in 3 more years, we'll have you back on.
Well, let's not make it to 3 more years. I didn't realize it was so long, but yeah, we'll keep in touch, and thank you guys. And I'm great to see you becoming rock stars in the podcast world. It's really good to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I don't know if that's the right term. We're pod stars.
I don't know if that's the right term. Yeah.
Pod stars. Yeah, come on now. No.
we're pod stars.
Okay.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. This was a lot of fun tonight. We appreciate all your support. Thank you for the donations, the beautiful comments we've been getting. We can't do it without you. Until next time, have a great evening.
Good night, guys.